This is the regular bi-monthly meeting of the Architectural Review Board. The Review Board is a city board appointed by City Council to serve on a volunteer basis. The board is charged by city law to review new construction and renovations within Mobile's historic districts. This is a public hearing, and there will be an opportunity to speak in favor of or in opposition to all applications that come before the board. Anyone wishing to address the board should sign in at the door, being sure to include your name and address and the item number you are here to discuss. When your agenda item is called, we ask the applicant to come forward to the podium. Staff will introduce the application to the board and briefly outline the request. At that time, the chair will convene a public hearing to review the application. All comments must be addressed to the board. After comments from the applicant and the audience, the board will determine the appropriate action for the request. Following the meeting, staff will generate correspondence notifying the applicant of the board's actions. Appeals of the review board concerning building issues are heard by City Council. There is a 15-day period to file the notice of appeal with the city clerk. Appeals of the review board concerning signage issues are heard by the Board of Adjustment. There's a 15-day period to file the notice of appeal with the Office of Urban Development. Would the chair call the meeting to order? Steve Stone. Present. Jim Wagner. Here. Craig Roberts. Katarina Eccles. Joseph Rodriguez.
Here. Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve minutes as posted for March 18th? All in favor? Any opposed? Is there a motion to approve mid-months as granted by staff? So moved. Do I hear a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Passes. First application, please. David, come on down.
The subject property, 755 Monroe Street, is a non-contributing property within the Church Street East Historic District. The application under review involves the installation of a wooden deck in the existing truck well at the southwest corner of the building. The guidelines only provide general direction regarding changes to existing non-historic buildings within historic districts. Changes should be in keeping with the historic character of the district in which the building is located, with similar orientation, scale, massing, and materials. The constructed deck is located on what would be considered the building's facade, tucked into a space formerly used by the loading dock area. The deck does not project forward of the existing raised walkway to its north, though the wooden ramp attached to its west side does project slightly, or south of the south elevation of the building. Its low profile results in a generally inconspicuous appearance. In accordance with the guidelines, the deck is in keeping with the orientation and scale of the existing structure. The surrounding vicinity is mostly residential in nature, and the modest scale of the deck is in character with those properties. The deck is composed of wood and steel. The wood decking and structure recall historic materials used in the surrounding district, and the steel railing is compatible with the industrial character of the building to which it is attached. While steel railing would not be permitted on a residential deck and is not in keeping with the character of the larger district, the existing deck faces an empty lot on the west side of Bayou Street. It is not visually intrusive, and there are no contributing resources nearby with which to be compatible. Therefore, the deck is in conformance with the guidelines. Staff recommendation: based on Section B above, staff believes the existing deck does not impair the architectural or historic character of the surrounding district. Staff recommends approval of the application. The subject property, 961.5 Texas Street, is a contributing property within the Oakley Garden Historic District. The application under review involves moving the existing shotgun-type house from its current location on the north side of Texas Street, on the south side of Texas Street, approximately 1/2 block to a vacant lot at the northwest corner of Texas Street and Marine Street. While the proposed relocation is not actually a demolition, some of the guidance related to demolition found in the guidelines may be helpful in this instance. The impacts of the removal of a structure upon the structure itself and its visual context are important, as is the future use of the space created by a building's removal, as follows from the guidelines. Quote, consider the impact of removing the historic structure relative to its context. Consider whether the building is part of an ensemble of historic buildings that create a neighborhood. Consider the future utilization of the site, end quote. The house at 961.5 Texas Street is located on the same tax parcel as the house at 961 Texas Street, and it is very close, approximately 10 to 15 feet, to its neighbors to the east and west. It is therefore unavoidably closely visually related to its neighbors. The double shotgun located to the east of the subject house, which is 961 Texas Street, is approximately the same age as 961.5 and is a contributing structure, but the house to the immediate west of 961.5 Texas Street is much newer, dating to the mid-20th century, and not a contributing structure. The subject building is more closely related visually and temporally to its neighbor to the east, but the two houses are in such close proximity that their suitability for modern residential use is limited, especially due to their being on the same tax parcel. Removal of 961.5 Texas Street would leave space between the house at 961 and the house at 963 that has not previously existed, but it would improve the livability of all three houses. The vacant land created by the removal of 961.5 Texas Street would be paved as a driveway for the house at 961. Open space further south on the lot would be reserved for a future addition to the remaining house to further improve its potential for contemporary use. The guidelines specific to relocation state, consider whether or not a structure will be relocated within the same district and in a similar context. Relocation may be more appropriate when the receiving site is in the district. Relocated buildings shall be placed in situations that do not impair the architectural or historic character of the surrounding buildings and district. When relocating a building, maintain its general placement and orientation on the new site so as to maintain the architectural and historic character of the streetscape and district. End quote. The subject house would be moved within the Oakley Garden District to a lot less than 1 block away. It would be placed on the lot at the corner of Texas Street and Marine Street so that it faces south toward Texas Street as it has for its entire previous history. It would be located 8 feet east of the property line between it and the adjacent property to the west in schemes A and B, and 6 feet from the property line adjacent to the west in scheme C. The existing house at 952 Texas Street, which is the adjacent property to the west, is a shotgun-type house, and another shotgun-type house is located to its immediate west. The addition of the subject house to the row would be in keeping with the arrangement of many other streets with rows of shotguns in Mobile's historic districts. Therefore, the relocation of the subject house to the proposed lot at 950 Texas Street would not impair the architectural or historic character of the surrounding buildings or the district. The application further proposes changes to the existing structure in 3 possible schemes, A, B, and C. The proposed changes include the additions of living space and/or porches, the rehabilitation of existing historic windows, the replacement of the front door with a paneled wood door, and the reconstruction of the front porch. Two schemes propose converting an existing window on a side elevation to a door. All three schemes propose placing the house on a brick pier foundation and the creation of a walkway leading from the existing sidewalk along Texas Street to the front porch steps. Scheme A proposes a one-room wide, one-room deep addition to the east elevation after moving. There would be a rear-facing porch on the north elevation of the addition. The addition would be supported by a brick pier foundation and surmounted by a hipped roof covered in matching shingles. The addition would be clad in wood clapboards to match the existing. Louvered wood shutters would be added to windows on the facade and the east elevation. The front porch would be rehabilitated with 10-inch wood boxed columns, new wood stairs, new wood railing and balustrade, and new wood newel post. A driveway would be created along the northern property line with access from Marine Street. Scheme B proposes no addition of living space, but the addition of a partial-length porch on the east Marine Street elevation. The porch would rest on a brick pier foundation and be sheltered by a shed roof covered in shingles to match the existing. The porch roof would be supported by 8-inch turn supports and decorative brackets. The northernmost window opening in the east elevation would be converted to a door for porch access from the house. The opening would be filled with a paneled wood door. There would be no outdoor steps to access the porch. The front porch would be rehabilitated with turn posts and brackets to match those on the new side porch. A driveway would be created along the northern property line with access from Marine Street. Scheme C, a combination of Scheme A and Scheme B, proposes to locate the house more toward the center of the new location lot. A one-room wide, one-room deep addition would be constructed on the west elevation, which is toward the existing shotgun house at 952, and a side porch would be added to the east elevation, the Marine Street side. A driveway would be placed along the west property line, giving access from Texas Street. The guidelines generally call for the preservation of existing materials and forms whenever possible, repair rather than replacement, and replacement in kind when necessary. All three proposed rehabilitation schemes follow the guidelines, specifically the following directives: preserve original building materials, preserve the original form of a historic roof, preserve the original eave depth of the roof, preserve the decorative and functional details of a primary door, preserve the functional, historic, and decorative features of a historic window, preserve the original piers, foundation, and foundation infill whenever possible. Two of the schemes, A and C, propose additions to the house. It is difficult to make a useful addition to a shotgun house. It is difficult to make a useful addition to a shotgun house due to its characteristic small size. Designing a subordinate addition is challenging. However, the potential additions shown in Scheme A and Scheme C are located to the rear and side of the existing house as prescribed by the guidelines. The proposed additions are compatible in size, massing, scale, and exterior materials with the existing house, and the roofs are compatible in pitch, complexity, shape, and materials with the existing. The new porch proposed in Schemes B and C is compatible with the existing house. Its shed roof is subordinate to the existing hipped roof, and its scale, proportion, and materials are appropriate for the existing building and the district. The existing front door is not original to the structure and is not appropriate for the house. The proposed replacement would more closely reflect the age and style of the building, thus being in conformance with the guidelines. The existing front porch of the house is not composed of the original materials or in-kind materials. Rather, the cement slab floor rests on a continuous cinder block foundation. The porch is accessed via prefabricated cement steps, and the porch roof is supported by plain, non-historic lumber. The porch is enclosed by plain, non-historic wood railing and balustrade. The guidelines state, if replacement of a porch is necessary, design it to reflect the time period of the historic structure. Because the design of the original porch is unknown, it cannot be recreated. However, the designs proposed for both the front porch and the new side porch in schemes A, B, and C are reflective of the time period in which the house was constructed and of the district. The proposed material is wood, and the designs are in proportion with the existing house. The proposed porches, therefore, are in conformance with the guidelines. Schemes B and C propose the conversion of a side window to a door for access to a newly constructed porch. While changes to fenestration patterns on a primary facade are generally not appropriate, the proposed conversion would be appropriate in this case, as the formerly mostly obscured elevation would be open to Marine Street. It is somewhat unusual for an elevation fronting on a street to lack a door. Therefore, the conversion of an existing window to a doorway would maintain the existing fenestration pattern, if not the specific fenestration type. The proposed conversion is in the spirit of the guidelines. All three rehabilitation schemes call for the removal of the two existing rear additions. One of the two shed-roofed additions is sheathed in drop siding rather than the weatherboard siding on the original block of the house, and they lack the exposed rafter tails under the eaves of the original structure. The dates of the additions are unknown, but they appear to date to the mid-20th century based on the building materials used and the dimensions of the additions. The removal of the later additions is not addressed in the guidelines. However, the removal of these small, inconspicuous rear additions would not impair the architectural or historic character of the house. Staff recommendation. Based on Section B above, staff believes moving the structure at 961.5 Texas Street to 950 Texas Street would not impair the architectural or historic character of the house or the surrounding district. Staff recommends approval of the application.
Thank you for that very thorough. I think the conference is over.
The subject property, 1404 Old Shell Road, is a contributing property within the Old Dolphin Way Historic District. The application under review involves the construction of a gabled dormer addition toward the rear of the west slope of the existing roof. The guidelines offer preferred locations for rooftop additions. The proposed addition is similar to a camelback addition, although it does not straddle the center line of the existing house. As prescribed by the guidelines, the proposed vertical addition would be placed toward the rear of the existing house to be less obvious from the street. The guidelines call for additions to be compatible in massing, scale, and materials with the existing structure, while also being subtly different from the original structure. The proposed gabled addition would be subordinate in scale and massing to the rest of the building, as the dimensions of its gable would be much smaller than the primary front-facing gable of the house. The wall cladding would match those of the existing house. However, the wall planes, northwest and south, would be stepped back from the planes of the lower main story of the structure, thus differentiating them. Per the guidelines, roofs of additions would be compatible with the existing building's roof in shape, pitch, material, and level of complexity. The proposed gabled dormer would mimic the existing roof's shape and pitch, tie into the existing east slope of the roof, and be equally uncomplicated. The roof would be covered in dimensional shingles to match the existing. Further, as directed by the guidelines, the roof would mirror the decorative details of the existing house, including exposed rafter tails and knee brackets. The proposed windows of the addition would be wood 3/1s placed in a regular pattern. This material, light arrangement, and fenestration pattern are typical of houses of the era of the same era as the subject house. Therefore, the windows are in conformance with the guidelines. Based on Section B above, staff believes the proposed gabled dormer addition would not impair the architectural or historic character of the existing house or the surrounding districts. Staff recommends approval of the application.
Nothing to add? No? I have one question on this closet bump out on the second floor. Is that visible, going to be visible from the elevation? The what? I'm sorry?
Yeah.
There's a closet,
At the top left.
No, that's under the attic.
so that's all tucked in the roof?
Yes. That's just a little low closet.
Okay. Keep that in mind. Any other questions? All in favor? Any opposed? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, sir. You're already out the door.
I think I want to feel real myself. I think it's a real good idea.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
That was quite the analysis, Christine.
I'll eat one every 15 seconds.
Next time, don't submit 3 schemes, for the love of God. Yeah, thank you all very much.